This graph should scare you more than any horror movie. This is how many months you have left as an 18-year-old. How many of them you are sleeping, working, driving and doing all the stuff you have to do. And if you look at the average 18-year-old, you will spend over 90% on screens. So when you're 80 years old, sitting in your rocking chair, on what life do you want to look back on? A life where you climbed the biggest mountain, won a box fight, learned to play an instrument, built meaningful friendships, or a life that looked like this? If the first one sounds more interesting to you, but you are still stuck in endless consumption, this video might help you. To decrease your screen time, you first have to understand the 3 things I'm going to tell you in this video. First, why are you even consuming all the time? And of course there are many reasons, but one of them is that it's become a habit. That consuming, if it's on TikTok, Instagram, all those social media apps, or on Netflix, consuming has become a habit. So how does a habit work? You have a trigger, then the behavior and a reward. And the trigger in this case could be anything, like being bored, feeling stressed, feeling lonely, and so on. And now you have learned, okay, through the behavior of consuming, through the behavior of going on social media, scrolling on TikTok, watching Netflix, this pain of feeling lonely, for example, goes away. So this is the reward. And now your brain knows, okay, every time I feel lonely or stressed or bored, I just have to consume, and then I directly feel better. Of course, this is simplified, but in general, this is how a habit works and how you got into the habit of consuming probably. So you don't consume for no reason, you consume because it solves a problem. Many people think consumption itself is the problem, but that's wrong. This consumption solves the problem of maybe feeling bored, stressed, lonely, but only in the short term. However, the hidden cost is higher than you think. It literally takes over control of your life. And it does that in 3 different ways. First, it hijacks your dopamine. Dopamine is the thing that gives you motivation to do anything, motivation to get a reward. And now because you have this consumption that gives you an instant reward without having to work for it, doing the hard stuff to get a bigger and worthwhile reward becomes harder. Okay, but what does that mean? When you're on TikTok, for example, and scrolling, then you get an instant reward. And now you're less motivated to, for example, go to the gym because that's something hard. But if you wouldn't scroll, if you don't have those instant rewards, then you would still have the dopamine to get a reward, but now the dopamine would be used to actually do the hard stuff, to go to the gym instead of just scrolling and getting the reward directly. The second way how consumption takes over control of your life is through the habit we just talked about. So now when you get bored, when you feel lonely and when you are stressed, you just have the habit of consuming. Because you don't have to sit in those uncomfortable feelings, you also don't really have to think. Because when you're bored, for example, if you wouldn't scroll, wouldn't consume directly, then you would have thoughts. Thoughts would come in. But now you don't even have to think anymore. And that, of course, completely takes away direction of your life. You don't get those insights, what you actually want to do with your life. And the third reason why consumption is taking over control of your life is because it's the path of least resistance. And that everyone does it. So you just think it's normal. You just think this lifestyle of staying up till 2 a.m. and scrolling in the night, that's normal. Because your friends do it too, so can't be that bad. But think about the graph from the beginning. It's not normal to spend over 90% of your time on a screen. Over 90% of the time you could use for doing something really worthwhile, for experiencing something, for having adventures and so on. But if you think it's normal because everyone does it and it's just the path of least resistance, then you also don't have a desire to change. And then your life will really look like the graph from the beginning, because there's no desire to change. Your phone puts you in a passive consumption state. And that keeps you from living the life you actually want. However, the good news are you can fix it. You can get away from all this consumption and actually start living the life you want. You just need this certain spark, this certain awareness that it's not normal, that you don't want to spend your life like that. That's the first step. And I guess if you watched this far, you already have something of that. But what can you do now? So what are some action steps? So first, really easy, I would say, is watch this kind of content. But also there you have to look out for you just consuming all this content. Because if you're honest to yourself, you don't really need that many videos. If you just have some of the basics covered, you can just start and don't really have to watch those videos anymore. But just having the basics, knowing the basics, how to actually get away from this consumption and understanding your own behavior, why you consume so much, that's really important to get away from that. Then the second thing, also not really obvious, but just being honest to yourself and taking full responsibility for your actions. So just looking at your screen time, seeing if it's maybe 8 hours or 5 hours or whatever, then just looking at it and knowing, okay, I have a problem here and I want to solve it. And just being completely honest to yourself. Because if you lie to yourself and think to yourself, yeah, okay, it's not that bad, then you also won't really change something, and that takes responsibility away from you. Okay, maybe it's not your fault, but it's still completely your responsibility. So just get the knowledge of the basics, how to stop consuming all this stuff, and then just be brutally honest to yourself and take full responsibility over your actions. That are two basics that really would help you to actually implement all this stuff you hear from those videos, like how to quit social media and so on. That's like the foundation. But now, how do you actually decrease your screen time? Now in this video, I won't go too deep into that, but I'll cover the basics. Now first, I would concentrate on decreasing your time on social media, because that's probably the biggest problem for you. So some action steps: turn off your notifications for all those apps like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all this stuff, and then either decrease your screen time bit by bit or just delete them straight away. That's really just your choice. If you just do this stuff, your screen time will get lower and the life you actually want to live will get closer. If you want to go deeper into what you can actually do to decrease your screen time, just more action steps, then you can watch this video. And remember, the way you spend your day, that's how you spend your life.